Hey, Printers, welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Bruce from Printavo. We have got a very special guest, and hopefully somebody for next year's Printers conference too, which we'll talk about from this year as well, because it leads in perfectly into everything else. Aya Fukai, Aya has started, runs, operates, is just the general everything to Aya Pastry. Aya is also a Michelin-Star pastry chef, an award-winning pastry chef. And I also found the words executive pastry chef. Am I missing any other really cool titles?
Just owner of a bakery, I guess now.
But you've got like a crazy, crazy background. But hold on, before we get into that, walk us through the week of Pronosos Conf and just everything that unfolded.
Sure. So we were having a special pop-up event with another small business called Sugoi Sweets, and that same weekend we were going to launch the pop-up. And around the same time, two of my managers, I believe it was the day prior, it was very last minute that I had to cancel the presentation due to two of my managers saying that they had COVID symptoms, including fever and coughing. And when it comes down to something like that, we take that very seriously in the bakery. And unless they come back with a negative PCR test, I don't allow them back on the property, especially with those specific kind of symptoms. And I've been hearing a lot of people even getting COVID after they had gotten the vaccine. So we're extra super careful, especially having a lot of drivers that go off to drop off at our wholesale locations and our customer service face to face within the bakery storefront. So I had to stay at the bakery to cover and do their jobs pretty much. But just part of being a small business owner, I think, especially when it's
Yeah.
two manager positions, there isn't necessarily other managers that can cover those specific job duties.
Got it. Yeah, no worries. We got the email and we're like, oh, that's a bummer, but totally understand. Tell us just a little bit about Aya Pastry.
Sure. So we are a Chicago bakery that does both wholesale and storefront retail sales, as well as a drive-through for retail. We have about 50 different accounts within the city that ranges anywhere from a grocery or supermarket type to a restaurant or a cafe. And then we also have our retail storefront, which is more of where we can do a little creative projects, such as the pop-up that I did with Sugoi Sweets. We'll be selling pastries, fresh breads. Everything is baked daily and sold both in the retail and wholesale sector.
So a lot of people are listening and saying, "What? Why do you have someone who runs a bakery on our like Decorated Pearl podcast?" I think so. I was touring for people that are listening. Brett Bowden shop in Printed Threads in Texas, and he was just talking about how similar shops are to and shop owners are to the lives of
Mm,
restaurant owners, and the dealing with people and management and getting things out and customizations and orders
yes.
and tracking, scheduling, and all this stuff. And these are just some of the things I wanted to get into today too, and how you run your business. But it was a really interesting observation. Um, Now you talk about people and those two managers having call off. What does your team structure look like?
So right now we have about 27 employees. We have
Hmm.
different departments within the bakery that specializes in different sectors to make it run. There's the office team where we have an operations manager, myself, and a sales manager. And then there's a pastry kitchen that has a pastry chef as well as pastry sous chef. And then we have the bread kitchen that has the head bread baker as well as her sous chef. And then we have the dishwashing team. and then the logistics team, which is in charge of all the packaging as well as delivering.
How many deliveries do you make every morning?
Depends on the day. I would say on the weekends it's quite large because of different accounts having brunches and more orders. But I would say anywhere from 30 to 40 is normal.
Wait, so somebody has to go to 30 to 40, or there's different vans, or
Yeah, we
like how
have
does that
three
work in the morning?
vehicles. So
And they all
we,
have to be done by opening for them, right? Or is it
of course,
like an 8 a.m., 9 a.m. thing?
no cafe accounts start at 6 a.m. So we have overnight bakers who end their shift at 10:30, and we also have the first one in, which is an AM baker well, 3 a.m. bakers who start at 3 a.m. in the morning, and our drivers start at 4 a.m. to start delivering some of those products.
Oh, wow. How do you manage that shift? Is there a manager there on staff too for problems that arise?
Yes. So usually there is a 3 a.m. Manager who's in charge of the actual production. So we'll have a
Uh-huh.
bread sous chef or someone along those lines within that time. And then the 4 a.m. person is the logistics manager. And she's in charge of dispatching all the cars, packing all of the breads and pastries to make sure that they go out with our more line employees who are drivers and packers.
So when you were scaling to that point, obviously when you started, was it just you and doing everything, or how did you get to the point where like it? Because it sounds like you've got a good amount of hierarchy here to help take things off, unless
Yes.
there's COVID scares. But
Yes.
uh, how did you get to that point?
So when I first started, we didn't even have retail at all. It was all just starting with wholesale. And when you start with two or three accounts, there's no budget to actually hire a manager or even a
Right.
driver. So I am literally in the kitchen making things and then waking up or staying up all night and delivering it the next morning, which is kind of crazy. We've come a long way within the 4 years that we've stayed
So were
open.
you working nights then, basically, to get everything ready for the morning deliveries?
I was working about 16 hours a day every day
Okay, day and
for,
nights. Yeah.
yeah, day and nights, all day. And depending on the needs of the bakery, it was really a hard grind. Definitely coming from you know working in every position to now more of an overseeing position where I'm in charge of looking to the future of the bakery rather than doing the operational day to day things unless it's needed, like on that day that I needed to cancel.
So how did you scale the people hiring then? Was it, because I think a lot of us, me included, will hire to give us more capacity to like print more, to bake
Hmm.
more. But then eventually that doesn't scale because you're the touch point to everybody
Right.
versus, a manager. Was there any process you were following, or was there another restaurant that you were like, here's the flow of it to build this up, or
Prior to opening, I definitely went around to different bakeries to see what their model was like and what their structure was like. Zingerman's in Michigan happens to be one of the more memorable ones since they're a huge operation and they have a bakery as well as all these restaurants that they're doing all the breads and pastries for. So I
Mhm.
mean, that's our operation times, I don't know, maybe 10, 20. Um, Definitely learned from that, as well as Public and Quality Bread. Greg Wade was nice enough to kind of show me how his operation worked. But I think for us, it was more of a learning experience as we went along in the process of opening. It didn't necessarily fall and pan out exactly like those two places that I just mentioned. And I think we grew it department by department. So first was obviously the kitchen positions, the having
Mhm.
a head baker as well as a pastry sous chef or a pastry lead. and then going into an operations manager so that they can start structuring more of the paperwork side, like making invoices and creating orders. Because I was doing that to begin with too. And then it went to I think the last addition in terms of the managerial hierarchy that was very necessary was that logistics manager position, which was dispatching and, packing and delivery. So that last position kind of fell in. And after that, it was a matter of hiring people right below them as supervisors. And then we just kept on hiring. And I think we have even a little bit more room to take on more growth in the bakery, which is kind of scary to think about because there's only so many square footage, but we're doing it.
Yeah. So so there's the manager, then there's a supervisor under them, and then there's the people on the ground floor that are.
Yes.
Got it. Is there, and the manager will oversee one supervisor or multiple supervisors?
It's one per department, pretty much.
Okay, got it. And then how many, people on the ground floor do you know that you need until you need another supervisor, let's say, to help? Like, is it a 5 to 1, or does it just depend? Some are less, some are more.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting that you just said 5 to 1 because that's pretty much where we're at right now. I think as soon as we start reaching 7 or 8 line employees, we would probably have to add one more supervisor, like that junior manager position.
Got it. And how do you find those supervisor roles? Because we try to promote people up. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Sometimes you got to bring somebody from outside. How have you gone about that?
Yeah, most of it has been internal promotions. We have been very lucky with turnover in terms of the original crew. There are people that has come and gone throughout the pandemic, especially because that's a very difficult thing, I think, to manage, just people in general right now. But ever since we opened, we have had a handful of people that have stayed since the beginning, and not even just that, but going back even further to places that I have worked with these people prior to the bakery.
Oh, so you brought them with from previous restaurants.
Exactly. So there's some sort of a working relationship that I'm familiar with. For example, my operations manager, she used to be my pastry sous chef at a hotel that I worked at. And although she was, a completely capable sous chef, since then she's had a child and she wanted to be able to work office hours. And I've always thought she was very intelligent and very organized. And I thought, you know what, like we're a new company. We can try anything that we want. Why don't we try this position where you become an operations manager? And what more can you ask for, for someone to operate something where she actually knows how to produce the product and how long it takes to make something or how difficult it is to make something for that person to be in charge. It's worked out very well. So we've had some very interesting shifts where, I had a pastry cook who it's kind of different even within a bakery, bread baking and pastry, like sweets, the kind of personality and the kind of traits that you have to succeed in each department is a little bit different. And I've always thought that this pastry cook would be a better bread baker, and she made that transition and now she's our head baker. So there's a lot of promoting within. And then I have also hired from outside. That all depends on obviously that initial interview. I think a lot of it has to do more with personality traits rather than what's on your resume. Of course, I'm looking for quality jobs on the resume, but
Industry
There's
experience too, or no?
Yeah, of course, industry experience. But there's just some things that can't be taught, like enthusiasm, motivation, willingness to learn, or just your overall intelligence. I feel like if you have those things, you can learn and adapt. And for us being a bakery that has both a wholesale and a retail model, there aren't too many places that are like us. So I'm not necessarily looking for people with that same background. I'm looking for someone that can adapt and learn with us, especially because we are newer business.
So with this, management layer, what does your day to day look like now?
Sure. Provided that all of the managers are on property and
Yes. And in attendance, yes.
yes, and in attendance. My day to day looks at more of what is coming up in the future rather than the day to day operations of things. So we're looking at sales goals, budgeting, lots of spreadsheets, but also fun marketing ideas, collaboration projects that I can do with other people, or something like this where it's a podcast or marketing outreach. Those are more of what I focus on. So while everyone is right now baking Thanksgiving pies, I'm looking at what baking Thanksgiving pies. I'm looking at what.
Got it. Okay.
Mhm.
So forward thinking and more growth. Are there any things that you feel like are on your plate that you'd like to also get off, like and hire a role for,
Social
or
media
that
would be
you're still
great.
taking on that you shouldn't?
One of the first positions that
Uh-huh.
I guess it's not even a position. We used to have a social media and PR company that helped us pre-pandemic, but once that first initial pandemic scare came on, the first thing that I thought was I need to protect my staff and cut down on costs. So the third companies that we had hired were the first ones to go. And that's how it started, where I started taking over our Instagram account, our Facebook account, social media, and also the website things. So I guess that's part of my job right now, day to day as well, is answering all of that, and like our website development and when to do specials and things like that. But I ended up taking all of it. So when people are on Instagram and they're DMing the bakery, it's me actually answering back and commenting back to everyone. As much as I enjoy that, it does get pretty daunting because I think between the front of the house, because the office is located right by the storefront, where people can literally see me sitting at the computer. Between that and the phone calls that we get and the social
Yeah.
media commenting and DMs, I think I talk to about 200 people almost every day. So, and our staff. So that can get pretty overwhelming very quickly. So a social media person would be wonderful if we could have that.
For sure, for sure. We found good luck there too with interns, especially Chicago or
Mm-hmm.
people in summer. Obviously, it's only a couple of months, but at least I figured out what would be a good person for a full time role, just of like the getting the training together and the how to help coach
Mm-hmm.
them and the things that you feel like you would say.
Right, because they have to respond on behalf of you.
Exactly, exactly. Uh, with all of those, like just growth that you've had, I mean, 27 people, were there any interesting pivotal points in the business that really changed the trajectory? I mean, of course, there's just like the constant grind, but anything that really shifted it?
Yeah, I think the addition of retail was what completely shifted our business model, and allowed me to actually start looking at the future and forecasting and being able to focus a lot more on the outside things than daily operations. We used to only do retail on the weekends, and it was just for fun. But then COVID struck, and we said, you know what? We've lost all of our wholesale accounts except for the grocery ones because they had to shut down in Chicago.
Because they were the hotels and the restaurants that you were shipping. Got it.
Exactly. So we said we need to figure out a way to somehow all have jobs, stay afloat, and keep this place open. And we shifted to doing retail. And as soon as we added that, I think that was the pivotal moment where everything changed. Everything.
What was it the revenue that all this additional sales that was coming in, or it was just a new sales channel?
Yes, that it being a new sales channel was one of the reasons, and the profit margin's much higher on retail compared to wholesale. So if you're selling 200 croissants to a restaurant or a hotel, it's the same as selling 100 in our storefront.
Got it.
So that allowed kind of this breathing room of, revenue coming in that allowed that kind of shift to happen. And the other thing that happened with opening retail was all of a sudden there was brand recognition. So we were open for retail for, I don't know, I want to say about 6 months before things started becoming back alive. And all of a sudden we're getting these inquiries from cafes that we didn't have before who wanted our croissants to be served with their coffee. Because our retail brand grew so much, people were seeking for our croissants. Whereas before, when you're doing wholesale to restaurants and hotels, I think there's some sort of a romanticizing about food where people want to say that they made everything in-house.
Got it.
So,
but the end customer doesn't know
exactly
about you guys.
Exactly. So all of a sudden, with the retail growth and the brand recognition, it became something that other companies wanted to say they carry, rather than try to hide and say, "Oh, we make this in house," or
Sure.
they get baked fresh daily, and not the name attached to it. All of a sudden, people wanted the name attached to it, and I think that was the pivotal moment.
So there had to have been a bunch of things that you had to pick up pretty quickly to get into retail. I'm just thinking like the point of sale system, like staffing it, I don't know, sales tax now, just a bunch of things.
Yes. It's all learned very quickly and adapted very quickly.
Were there things you would have done differently going into the retail side now?
Honestly, I think it was pretty successful in terms of the rollout. We've adapted along the way to making sure that, again, we didn't want to hire more people when we were concerned about keeping the existing staff. So it was the operations manager and the sales manager and myself being a cashier and running the storefront. But we have grown since then to add actual sales associates in the front. And POS system, we kind of lucked out because prior to, doing retail 7 days a week, we also happened to have a pickup option available with an e-commerce website for a bakery.
Got it.
So we just turned that into a POS model, which is Shopify. I'm sure some of the printing people have used that as well. But it was a pretty quick turnaround with a lot of foresight because my sister-in-law is a emergency nurse and she works on the West Coast. And if you remember the beginning of all of this, it swooped in from overseas to the West Coast and then kind of gradually making its way onto the rest of the US. So we had been talking about, all of the food industry things and everything that's not a emergency thing would probably close within the next 2 or 3 weeks. So we were kind of planning even before anything closed, and having this, doomsday plan intact. And we executed it the day that everything shut down. We were already rolling.
I went to go visit and tasted. You gave me a bunch of treats, which were all super, super good. It makes me wonder with that and getting into the retail side, how do you differentiate yourself? Obviously, I'm sure you've got like a strong name and brand from being in the pastry side and working at these high end restaurants for a while.
Mm-hmm.
But in retail world too, your pastry from, I don't know, grocery store versus another pastry, is it like marketing campaigns or is it the social side like you're talking about?
I think it's a little mix of both. And I'm sure every company seeks for output on high quality items, but that's really our specialty, where we have all these people, like I said, from my past who have worked in these Michelin-star restaurants, coming in and baking at a bakery. And part of the reason why I wanted to open a bakery was because it's so much more approachable than what I used to do. Although I enjoyed making these beautiful plates with tweezers and decorating them and having these, little tiny bites that were so precious. I couldn't even really ask my friends or family to drop in at the restaurant casually, because you're sitting there for 4.5 hours to have 16 courses, to have two little bites of desserts at the end, and you're shelling out $450 for one guest. And I just wanted to deliver the same kind of quality, but at an accessible, approachable bakery. And I think that's what differentiates us from most bakeries. The fact that we do come from restaurant backgrounds, where we're disciplined to make something of high quality, but let's do that times 500 for croissants. Let's do that times 1,000 for baguettes every day. And that's hard to do, the consistency, especially with baking when, you have live things like yeast, and the weather affecting everything. But I think that's what our focus is on, so that, every time somebody walks into the bakery, they feel a little bit happier walking out. I'm not really trying to change anyone's, world or blow their minds or anything like that. It's a sense of comfort in this one little product, that's executed well at a high technical level.
It seems like PR, as you mentioned, you hired a firm before, also helped drive
Mm-hmm.
a lot of awareness to restaurants. Like you could be in the top 15 dessert spots in Chicago on, a magazine, and that could help. Is that a big piece of it too, of getting that initial traction? Or is it really just kind of slow growth, friends and then friends of friends? And
For us, it was a very organic growth. And again, I think it's kind of a rare pandemic success story, where everything shut down and there were very few places open to even write about.
mm-hmm.
And, we were one of those places. And that kind of caught the initial attraction, in terms of PR and marketing. Because when we were just doing it on the weekends, there really wasn't too much information out about us in terms of a bakery where you can go as a regular customer to pick something up. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I think chance and luck played a definite role in there. I can't take all of the credit, and I don't think it was so much a marketing strategy, but something that we fell into. And then from there, it was organic growth, whether it be Instagram or word of mouth.
Got it. Got it. And then I'm just kind of curious on the software side. Do you guys use something to keep track of orders and the status of orders and delivery and you know all of that? Because I remember when I went there was a lot of paper on the wall there, and it was
Yes.
like, here's every delivery, and it was highlighted, I think, if it was done or not. And
Yes. So we do use Shopify for the POS system to keep track of all retail orders and local deliveries that we make to retail customers. But for the wholesale side, everything is something that we created as a system. We do have a spreadsheet whiz that is our operations manager who's able to link multiple different spreadsheets and ordering portals to create these daily boards, which turn into production sheets for each of the bread and the pastry kitchen. And then also a packing list for the packers and drivers to go to every day. It's kind of insane how we kind of created this system that works, but it's not half. I would say a quarter of it is manual entry.
all right, so we're gonna get into pastry Tavo next. Um, Shop management for bakeries. Yeah, that's super interesting. I mean, you guys are clearly busting butt almost 24 hours a day. It sounds like to just even hit these daily deadlines.
Hmm.
Do you also let some of the customers, can they customize what you guys are making, or is every hotel sort of have their own version of things, a
So
restaurant?
we are part of the What If Syndicate, which is also the restaurants Maple and Ash, as well as Etta. So we customize for those restaurants, and we do their desserts all custom. But for regular restaurants and hotels, we have a wholesale menu that people would order from.
Got it.
I think, with t-shirts and things like that, you have, whether it be like screen print, or you have a template, right? And that you use over and over and over, or a press plate, right?
There's actually a lot of different variables just from the type of print, the type of ink, the
Hmm.
where it's being printed, the type of shirt, the color, and so on and so on. But I think the shop owners definitely try to template it a bit, but there's so many different types of customers that want different items.
Yeah, I think that's definitely a challenge with us too. Where we do have restaurant owners coming up to us asking if they can do a custom dessert for them or a custom bread.
Mm,
And unfortunately, at the bread and pastry level, where you're in a wholesale environment where we're selling each piece for $2, it's not really possible. We tried in the past before when we had just started operations. And it was just not a successful model for us because then you end up with so many SKUs. And then on top of that, you're trying to train people different techniques to create a different product. Whereas I think if you are printing a t-shirt, you show the skill to the person once and they can adapt it to whatever different customization that you have to do.
so so if you did customize much, it would be like they have to order X amount of months worth of this, or however the contract set up.
It would be very rare. We haven't really done much custom aside from our own restaurant group, but if we were to take any
Okay.
custom orders, it would have to be like a guaranteed 200 pieces a day that they would order, or it would probably be in the realms of, hundreds per day. Maybe an airport could do something like that, but
Got it.
I can't
When did you
imagine.
train? When did you stop doing that?
After year one, really, we kind of trailed off on
Okay.
custom. And same with, we also get custom requests for retail as well.
Yeah.
Everyone, wants a different cake customized for their son's birthday or their girlfriend's, anniversary. But we also do not make custom cakes either, just because of the different kinds of skills and the time it takes for us to even come up with a pricing of those items. And it would be a one-time thing for us. And the other thing that's very important for us, I think that's different for a bakery model, is that we're trying to identify our own brand. And as soon as you start customizing cakes for people, and they post it on Instagram and say, hey, look at this, neon green electric guitar cake that we got from Aya Pastry. All of a sudden, I think your brand becomes muddled because it's not your vision, it's not your design that's out there, and there's just so much, so much social media right now these days that can just kind of determine what you stand for. And I didn't want that to be a problem. We have our signature cakes and we sell those. And if you want a custom message on them, we will do that.
Got it. And so you must have set the minimums too from the wholesale side.
Mm-hmm. Yes, exactly. We have a $50 minimum for any drop.
Got it. So it's dollars, not like because you've got the different SKUs anyway.
Exactly.
That could be different prices.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
And if they can't meet it, then they can come pick it up.
Got it. Okay. Got it. And what are you thinking about as far as 2022? Just planning for next year. What's the biggest challenge that you want to work on?
I think,
or that maybe that you have to.
There's a little bit of both, right? I think the biggest challenge is going to be, okay, so now we are in year 4 and we are a profitable company. Now we have to really say, okay, where is this profit going to? What are we improving? And I think one of the things that's very important to me is people. So whether it be, we just introduced a benefits package that's much better than what we used to have, or, how do we retain these people that are working for us? That's wonderful. I think right now there's, huge labor shortages in every market. I don't think it matters if you're a bakery or a t-shirt printing company or the manufacturer that even makes the actual t-shirts themselves. We're all having trouble with labor, whether it be keeping your employees or hiring. And I think, moving on, that's the sort of thing that I really have to focus on. And also the growth of the retail side. Now that we have proven that it's successful, what we do from here on out to keep on differentiating ourselves from different bakeries is what's going to be the challenge.
Got it. That's awesome. Aya, thank you so much for being able to join us. Everybody, if you're in Chicago, make sure to Google or Yelp Aya Pastry. It's going to be really, really good. So just don't eat any desserts for like the week before so you can save up all your sugar for that day only. Aya, thank you again. We really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Bruce.